Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Jess+Scott+You. And tonight, as we open the show, I was pulling a quote, my absolute favorite quote. Now, I got this when I graduated from college. 10 years after I started, I had to go back to get this. This is Roosevelt. Mrs. Roosevelt said this. And the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And while I was pulling out this quote to think about not only today being Veterans Day and the fact that when we grow up, we get to make choices about what we do, when we do it, and how we do it, we get to remember everybody who's still living that is making an active choice to live in the service of others. And that would be people like in the United States, and I know and in every country, people who participate in emergency response teams, the military, the Secret Service, whatever it is for your country and your area. And it's an amazing choice to make and to know that the things that you're doing, whatever your beliefs are, that the things that you're doing are for the greater good. And even if we're not in those lines of service, the things that we do every day, we try and do a lot for the greater good, whether that's for the fact we're living in our own self, whether that's the fact that we're doing it for our family, for our community, for our local or regional area, from gathering food to donating time to collaborating on projects. And then there was this little guy who just fell right off of my quote, right? You guys, I may have introduced you to before. Oh, excuse me, I'm holding you by your nose. This is Squinky Dinosaur, and he's about the size of a pea, okay? And we have these all over our house. This one I commandeered for my office because he's so cute, and he was a stowaway from Texas. So with that, welcome to the Jess+Scott+You. Who knows where this conversation about being in service to others will go? See you right after the intro.
Okay, Jess, take it away.
Maybe this guy can whistle like that, but this girl cannot. That was a great choice of music, Scott. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. It's been a crazy, crazy kind of week. Just major changes in life. But at the end of the day, as you're fond of saying, it's all good.
It's all good. I'm telling you, we had an arborist come in to our house today, so it's very interesting to realize how connected we all are, because Carter, in his infinite wisdom, was worried about the trees that were being taken down today, because we did have a whole bunch of trees on our 5 acres that came down today. And he was really worried. He's like, well, all the other trees, they're going to be like, those trees are just not there anymore. And so we talked about heart today, and the fact that even though the trees weren't there, they were in our hearts, even though we weren't trees. And that because they were part of our forest and our community right here on our dual property, that they were in the hearts of all the other trees too. And so in their memory, they went back to Stardust, and they get to become something new and different and serve the world in a different way. Now, how cool is that for a way to have a message of the day?
So much of it is how one chooses to frame things, and I think that was putting the sparkle into the day, Jess. Good job.
It was. Thank you. And to bring the sparkle into the evening, we have Marisa Goudy and Lisa Engles with us tonight, and boy, oh boy, are we two lucky people.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So Scott, jump right in.
I happen to have the privilege of seeing Elizabeth Gilbert give a nice inspirational presentation over the weekend. She's the person who wrote Eat, Pray, and Love, and I kind of knew about her ahead of time, but I really didn't. But she was really terrific. And one of the things that she talked about was Joseph Campbell and what a great guy he was. You might remember that he's spent a long time with Bill Moyers. And he's an American philosopher and has just spent years and years and years studying world cultures tries to put everything into context. And one of the things he discovered is that all cultures throughout time, it doesn't matter where or when, they all have a quest story. And I won't go into great details about it, but the quest story is that there is a boy and he is called upon to do a great task, and he says, no, not me, but he's compelled to do it, and he faces his fears, and at the end of the day he overcomes great obstacles, and then he comes home a transformed person, and that is the hero's quest. And her point, one among many points that she had, was that it was always a boy's quest, that there were never girls. There's never been a girl's quest. Girls were expected to stay at home and raise the family and be of service in that direction, but for the heroes, this was the hero's journey that was reserved for boys. And her point was that that's different nowadays. People are doing, women are stepping out and they're doing the hero's quest themselves. And she used herself as an example, and she's saying that that is something that is brand new, that has never happened in the history of mankind in the way that we're seeing it today. And that is more than a metaphor, but people, women are going out and doing more traveling, and they are taking charge of themselves, and they're bringing a different point of view than what guys have done in the past. And not to put any values on it other than this is something that is different, and it represents a change in the force, a change in the way that the world is organizing itself. And that's a little bit of the topic of tonight's program, is in service to others. And if we have new eyes and new hearts and new minds that are approaching that, how is that going to look? How's that going to look for the world? How's it going to look for women? And how's it going to look for men going forward? That is the question that I'm putting on the table for tonight's thoughtful discussion.
The fact that you bring, I mean, you know, synchronicity is another term that I forget whether it was Joseph Campbell or Jung that gave that to us. And I am living one of those extended moments of it with the whole concept of the hero's quest and the hero's journey. From the fact that right now I'm working on my own novel that has a heroine who's going to be going on a quest. I went to a writing retreat that was very much taught us the story architecture of how that quest works and how to apply it. And it's just, I was at Jonathan Field's interview yesterday. Everything, it's all coming up right now. And I think it's really bubbling up to show us that whole concept of we're the heroes of our own lives. And I'm certainly feeling that myself, that that's what I'm being called to do, even though, you know, when I was on, Jeffrey Davis was the one who led the authors retreat. And he gave us the story of The Wizard of Oz as the ultimate reflection of that hero's journey, and ironically it does have a heroine in it, and is actually probably one of those few and perfect examples that gives you a young woman who does this. But, you know, for me, I'm in Kansas. Well, I'm actually in New York, but at the same time, I'm not going to be leaving the farm. I've got 2 small children at home. My quest is going to be very much internal in terms of my own mind, my own spiritual practice. It's going to be what I'm writing. It's going to be giving my girls similar moments to what Jess was giving Carter in terms of describing the process with the trees. And so I think as you're talking about how there's a change in the Force, which I hope that you said that on purpose, because of course we know that Star Wars is the ultimate expressions of the hero's journey, so I got really excited when you said the Force. That there's a shift in that we're no longer necessarily going out onto the road and climbing up a mountain in any physical sense. It is much more metaphorical, and it's in our daily lives. And I think that's what is going to open it up to not just being, you know, young man with a rucksack taking off. It's instead going to be people at any point in their lives, in any situation, can really do it within the context of their own lives, as long as they're willing to make some really big mental, spiritual shifts. And I think that actually speaks a little bit to what you were saying too, Scott, about the possibility of what Hangouts afford us and the conversations we're able to have. I think that's just one more clear expression of the way we're making these journeys, and it's through communication in so many ways.
Lisa, is there something that's bubbling up that you're just needing to just, I hope, spout out?
The hero's journey has been something that I've have used as a model for years and years in my business, in my coaching, and in my life. And I think an interesting piece, I didn't know that, like, I never really thought about that piece that you're saying, Scott, of that there's never been a female, and I question that, if that's what Elizabeth Gilbert said, just because I feel, and maybe you would know this, Marisa, more than I would, but I feel like there's so many ancient stories and mythologies that include women in them that probably have the hero's journey, but I don't know because I'm not a mythologist. I just questioned if it's true about the male-female thing. But that being said, this idea of story and journey is so critical, and I think something that has been coming up for me and the work that I've been doing lately is that we are creating the narratives of our life all the time, and we're at a point in time in the history of humanity at which we are aware of our own journeys. Like, we aren't just the characters in our journeys, we understand that we're also writing our journeys. We have come to that point in our level of consciousness that we understand that we are the creator of our own journey. We are writing our own stories. And I think that we've also come to this point, which maybe we may or may not be aware of. There's two narratives that we can ultimately be playing out in our lives without separating them as good or bad, or one is better than the other. There's this one narrative that might be more steeped in ego or an egoic type of journey, which is from all spiritual teachings and enlightenment teachings would say that's what causes pain and suffering, right? And then there's this other narrative that we can choose to be a part of, which is our unique self narrative. And it's one that the philosophers like Ken Wilber and Mark Goffney talk about, this integral type of understanding that the unique self shows up in a way that goes through the same journey, perhaps, as the ego self, but experiences it much differently, experiences, as we go into this discussion of being in service, that being in service is part of our unique self-expression. We can't help it. That's just who we are in this world. It's almost not even a choice. It's just like that's how we show up, because that's what we're meant to be in this bigger picture of the hero's journeys.
I've written this down, and I'm going to ask the both of you to reflect on it and give the comments. One is the underlying nature of people. Is it fundamentally good, or is it fundamentally bad? And then within the context of self-actualization, what's the role between self-actualization and even the ability to be in service to others?
Whether it's just that I have to believe that we're fundamentally good, I don't know why else we get up in the morning or have children if there's a chance that, like, well, you're actually a bad seed, but I'll hope that I can water you enough that you'll turn out all right. For me, whether it's a Pollyanna-ish outlook, or I don't think it is. I think it's fundamentally, we are a mix. We are shadow, we are light, but I think we come through the act of creation itself has to have something beautiful to it. I don't think it can come from any sense of pure darkness. I think we have shadow that we have to recognize, and that there is some seriously dark, evil shit in this world that we have to recognize, because otherwise, I'll just think this away and create a new reality isn't going to really get us very far. It's just going to have a bunch of deeply privileged people assuming that it's always going to stay that way. And I'm not quite sure I can totally speak to the second part of your question, Scott. My first thought on it is that, this self-actualization journey to understand who you really are and understand the play of the shadow and the light within yourself has to be looked at as being either inherently or at least potentially unselfish. Because if it's always going to be thought going within, figuring out who I am, meditating, going to yoga, whatever it is that feeds your soul is a selfish act, then it's always going to be criminalized, especially when one lives in families and communities when you're the center, then people really need you. And I think we know more than that. We know that in order for us to show up to the people around us, to people in whether it's in business and family and friendships, we have to have a strong center. We have to know ourselves, and we have to be able to create for ourselves a world in which that isn't considered something that's horribly selfish.
And what about values then? I think that there's a big piece of values in what I've heard both of you guys talk about recently in the last few minutes, and that if we know what our values are, we can try to live to them, and we learn a lot about ourselves. And to me, being solid in self or knowledgeable of myself makes me understand that tomorrow I could be a completely different person than I was today. And for the last 5 years, I could just wake up and something could have been different, and I make a choice. I make a choice to be different, and then that shakedown happens, and it can happen instantaneously or over days or over months. And I realize I'm not who I was, but I'm a product of who I was. And I think we also get labeled with a little bit of, well, here's where we came from, and so this is what people know us as, and we kind of have to get rid of our outer skin like a snake or bugs in some sense to be able to break through and grow. It's kind of a weird thing, but it's true. It probably feels like that too.
Lisa?
Like, you can't, right, of course, have the dark without the light. You can't have the light without the dark. This goes to there just is, they coexist together. I believe that people are inherently good, and that we have to move through the shadow in order to understand our good. So we have to experience outrageous pain in order to understand and know what outrageous love is. And that's the paradox that we live in, is that light and shadow, they exist together, and to go to those extremes of the two sides helps you to understand. But to answer that first question, Scott, I believe that we're inherently good, that we are created from a divine source of pure love. And so that's just who we are. But this human experience, because of this human experience, part of our hero's journey is the dark. It's inevitable when we understand that the mythology of the hero's journey, it helps us to disidentify so much with the ego self, and this is all about me and my struggles and blah, blah, blah. And when we understand this beautiful mythology that Joseph Campbell has so beautifully laid out, that was actually written and has been laid out thousands of years ago through all the cultures and tribes across the planet, we can understand that, oh, okay, we're going through this collectively. Like, everybody experiences this.
I would like an explanation of how is it that the hero story can arise in different cultures, in different times, in different eras, and it's presumably so similar in every culture, and yet they've not had an opportunity to connect with each other in ways that we understand connections.
I don't know that I'm the one to answer that, but I think that that's been probably, Joseph Campbell might cover it. I have two of his books right here. I could go look up really quick.
Well, that was a question more to present a sense of awe and wonderment than anything else. There are some questions we just can't easily answer. How does service to others while still honoring yourself, how does that really manifest itself in everyday life?
Before Lisa mentioned the whole concept of the paradox of service versus servitude, of self-care versus selfishness. And I think after a while, though, I just set it up right there by saying versus. That as if we're constantly pitted in some sort of battle against ourselves, as if it's one or the other, as if it says that why do we attach self-care to the concept of selfishness, opposed to just saying, no, I'm doing this because if mama doesn't do yoga right now, I can't pick you up. There's the rubber meets the road in many ways, is just that concept of like practicing self-care in order to continue your daily activities.
Scott, you're asking how does being in service manifest itself? How does the rubber hit the road? For me, there has been an emergence within me that has taken place over a period of time where I think I would call it that I am, and I think this is happening for a lot of people, stepping into a place where I just know, like in my heart, that my work in the world is to be in service to the awakening of human and social potential, and I wake up excited to do that. And so Jess was mentioning something about values just a little bit ago. So where the rubber hits the road for me is I'm committed to being in service to the awakening of human and social potential through the work that I do in the world, as long as it's in alignment with my core values. And when I find myself being in service and it's out of alignment or not aligned with my core values, then that's when I start to feel grumpy, pissed off, frustrated, overwhelmed, and I have to step back and look and go, okay, what choices am I making right now? Because I'm not making choices based on my values, I guess, if I'm feeling this way, versus making choices. So there's like this marriage of those two, and I don't know if that's making sense, but that's for me how it manifests.
I love it, Lisa. And it sounds to me, and I'm hearing, or at least what's falling into place in between these ears, is there is a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy of this urge to self-identity that we lose when we are the parents of young kids. Where did our time go? What are we going to do? And then we get that back, and we are ready and able to create even more in the world for the people that we want to serve. And then when we make a contract, whether that's through money or trade or some sort of other value, there's some contract made, and then we choose that relationship that we're in, and we're delivering some sort of good or service in the best way that we know how. And it is up to us, and I love how you said this, with my core values and in alignment with what I'm doing. The cool thing is, we were all created with 24 hours in the day. And the cool thing is, we all have our own unique set of values. And even cooler is how we have the answer to somebody's need. And giving our information and ourselves away is awesome, as long as it doesn't dilute what we're doing for the people that we have, that we know we're providing a solution to, that we are able to serve in the fullest, that helps us get us where we want to go, as well as helps us realize and, I guess for lack of a better word, bloom into the person that we are supposed to be and live in the light that we are. Stardust!
Yeah, and no one ever said that being in service meant, number one, that you can't make money being in service. Nobody ever said that being in service doesn't mean not taking care of yourself and your self-care, as Marisa keeps bringing to the plate. And honestly, being a parent is perhaps the deepest level of service that we can have, at least from my experience of having a daughter. And it has taught me how to be with my clients and how to be in business, how to have how to handle the frustrations, how to handle being patient, like being more patient. And it has cultivated within me pieces that have allowed me to be an even greater service in the work that I'm doing in the world.
Lisa mentioned how people think of being in service and money as being antithetical. I know for me, I learned the process through entrepreneurship in so many ways, only because just when I first started out, it was like, well, okay, I'm doing this for the money because frankly, I have other people who need me and my attention, but I've got to have a business because I've got to earn some money to keep this family afloat. And so for me at that beginning stages, the whole concept of being in service felt like a luxury that other people had because they had more time, they didn't have the financial pressures, they were born differently in the sense that they were thinking about being a nun or something, because we tended to pull those things together. And for me, I think that was one of the first thoughts when I was invited to this conversation was, I'm really grateful that I was invited now because I feel like I can show up with the experience of really pushing against being in service and feeling a resistance and feeling crappy about myself, that it's a term we kind of pay a lot of lip service to, but it's a hard one to arrive at. And I think a huge part of it for me to arrive well is trust that, my needs can be taken care of by my showing up in service to someone else. And I think it really returns back to a lot of what Lisa's talking about the ego and trusting that you're where you need to be.
And we are here at the Jess+Scott+YOU show with Marisa Goudy and Lisa Engles, and we are talking about being in the service to others. And you know, I'm Jess, and Scott is my co-host. Woo! What a conversation so far. So far, so far. What do you think, Scott?
Has not disappointed in the least.
So Lisa, Marisa, I am so excited about everything that we've been talking about so far, and I want to know from you guys, what would be, we can't just narrow it down to one thing, but how about an idea or maybe a couple of ideas that this conversation has made you think of, that you want to make sure that we walk away thinking about, so that what we're talking about tonight can really help us go into the bigger world as ourselves, for ourselves, to make the impact we want on our bigger society by giving and sharing and serving.
But you said something about tapping into information about yourself, and I think ultimately that's really where being in service begins for me, is understanding, and this ties into a lot of what Lisa was talking about being aligned with your own values, having that own sense of who you are, where you are along the journey so far. Are you just walking out the gate? Are you just realizing that you're not in Kansas anymore? Do you have the Emerald City in sight? And knowing where you are on the path allows you to bring others along with you. I mean, if Dorothy didn't know what was up, there was no way she was going to be able to figure out how to save the scarecrow from burning, and there was no way she was going to help the Cowardly Lion stop hiding from behind her skirts. So I think it really does, the quest begins with self-knowledge. My own fixation is with self-care, and with really saying, when I've filled up the well, there's no fear that it's going to run dry. Here, let me give to you and let me share with you.
The hero's journey is not complete until the hero comes back home with a gift and gives that gift, whatever the hero learned, right, on the journey. They give back. That is the hero's journey, is to be in service. It's to give back the gift that you've discovered along your way. So I guess the takeaway for me would be, we're all always, our hero's journey is a lifelong journey that has chapters in it. We're never not on the hero's journey. And whatever chapter we're in, there's those phases that it's about. There are times at which it is time to return back with the gift, and there are other times that it's just time to deal with the fucking struggles. When you understand that mythology and you can then place yourself where you're at in the hero's journey, oh, that's where I'm at, and that's okay. Embrace it. You are where you are because that's exactly where you're supposed to be. Yeah, that's my little.
That's awesome. And one of the things I took away from listening to both of your amazing thoughts, Lisa and Marisa, is that just because I might have something to give one of you right now doesn't mean you have anything to give me right now. But somebody's going to come along that needs something, and you're going to have exactly what they need. And you will be able to give it to them. And then herein lies that circle of, eventually, when I am in need, it will be right there waiting for me if I choose to see it. So it's not necessarily instantaneous, and it is a journey, and it does take more than just us being our own soulful by ourselves, because we're not ever by ourselves.
Our theme this season is Me First, the ultimate unselfishness, and I think that we've been true to our theme tonight. Thank you.
Tell us, where can we find you online?
You can find me at marisagoudy.com. That site is currently under construction. It will send you over to Online Empowerment Formula, which is my collaboration with a website developer. I'm really excited that soon marisagoudy.com is coming to the world. So stay tuned for that.
And Lisa, where can we connect with you online?
Yeah, you can connect with me at interstatecoaching.com. Of course, you can also find me on Google+, just Lisa Engles, and that's where I'm the most active and the easiest place to find me, not Facebook. Google Plus.
I am honored and excited that you both were able to join us. This is the perfect day for it, in memory of whatever it is all the way around that we have to give thanks for and gratitude for. And I know for me, it's your presence here with me and Scott, and it's always for me, Scott, being the awesome co-host that he is. So thank you, everybody, for watching tonight. We will see you again, same time, same place, next week.